All right, guys, so we have some last minute shock polling data coming in just 2 days out from the election. This is a Des Moines Register and Seltzer poll out of Iowa, where they are now showing Kamala Harris leading Donald Trump by 3 percentage points in Iowa. So I want to break down what this poll is saying, why people are kind of freaking out about it, and what it could potentially mean for the broader electorate and how this is going to all play out. So here's the headline from the Des Moines Register. They say Kamala Harris leapfrogs Donald Trump to take lead near Election Day. Here's how. So first off, before we get into the actual details of this poll, this is why people are taking it seriously. Obviously, pollsters can get things wrong all the time. They got it drastically wrong in 2016. They sometimes overestimate Republicans. Sometimes they overestimate Democrats. But when it comes to this Seltzer poll here, this is their historical record, which is about as good as you could possibly ask for. So in 2022 for the Senate, they projected R plus 12 and it ended up being R plus 12. In 2020 for the president, they said R plus 7 and ended up being R plus 8. In 2020 for the Senate, they said R plus 4, it ended up being R plus 7. In 2018, for the governor, they said D plus 2, it ended up being R plus 3. So that's the biggest whiff that they've had over about the last decade or so. 2016, for president, they said R plus 7, it ended up being R plus 9. 2014 Senate, they said R plus 7, it ended up being R plus 8. And then in 2012, they said for president, it was going to be D plus 5, and it ended up being D plus 6. So again, about as solid of a record as you could ask for from a pollster. Now, does this mean that Kamala Harris is going to win Iowa? No, not necessarily. In fact, probably not. But it could have some, pretty major red flags for Trump when it comes to surrounding states, particularly in the Midwest or in the Rust Belt states, that he kind of has to win in order to pull out the victory in this election. So here are some of the details from the poll. They say a new Des Moines Register Mediacom Iowa poll shows Vice President Harris leading former President Trump 47 to 44% amongst likely voters just days before a high-stakes election that appears deadlocked in key battleground states. They say the results follow a September poll that showed Trump with a 4-point lead over Harris and a June poll showing him with an 18-point lead over Joe Biden, who was the presumed Democratic nominee at the time. So here's the breakdown. As you can see here, you got 47 for Kamala, 44 for Trump, a little 3% there for RFK Jr. Obviously that 3% could make the difference if all of those RFK people went over to Trump, but I guess that's, what happens when you run a campaign and then back out at the last minute. Not everybody is coming from RFK's campaign over to Trump, apparently. Now, they say the poll shows that women, particularly those who are older and who are politically independent, are driving this late shift towards Kamala Harris. They say independent voters who had consistently supported Trump in the lead up to this election now are breaking for Kamala. That's driven by the strength of independent women who back Harris by a 28-point margin. Holy shit. While independent men are supporting Trump, but by a smaller margin. They say similarly, senior voters who are 65 and older favor Harris, but senior women support her by more than a 2-to-1 margin of 63% to 28%. Again, you're seeing the massive gender divide that's taking place in this election between women and men. They say senior men favor Kamala by just 2 percentage points. So again, look at the difference in senior women versus senior men. Now, I'll leave you guys to guess. We're going to get to it here, but leave you guys to guess why there was such a drastic gender divide in this current election. Could it have anything to do with Republicans and specifically the Supreme Court justices that Trump appointed overturning Roe v. Wade? Could it have something to do with that? Here we have a quote from one of these people who was polled saying, "I like her policies on reproductive health care and having women choose their own health care. And the fact that I think that she will save our democracy and follow the rule of law." That was Linda Marshall, a 79-year-old poll respondent from Cascade who has already cast her ballot for Kamala. You can scroll down here, see a little bit of the enthusiasm and how much Trump supporters are excited to go out and vote for him versus how many Kamala supporters are excited to go out and vote for her. I mean, this is kind of a wash, a little bit of an edge there for Trump, 76% enthusiastic versus 71% for Kamala. They also say that large majorities of likely Harris or Trump voters in Iowa say that their mind is already made up. And those are the major factors that were playing into this poll. Again, massive issue here for the Trump campaign. when it comes to women voters. Massive issue here for the Trump campaign when it comes to senior voters, as well as especially independent women voters. So those are the key issues. Again, you can see from that one testimony of somebody who was interviewed, why that may be the case. Overturning Roe v. Wade, drastically unpopular. You also have the fact that I believe in Iowa, just recently they passed a 6-week abortion ban that went into effect. So again, here we have an analysis here from Dan Pfeiffer. Does this mean that Kamala is going to win Iowa? Probably not. But could this spell some sort of a massive red flag for the Trump campaign? He says here 3 options to interpret this poll. Number 1, Seltzer's right, and Kamala wins in a massive landslide. Number 2, this poll is just a bad poll, which could happen, right? That happens all the time. Number 3, Harris isn't really winning Iowa, but the poll is capturing a late-stage momentum that bodes well for Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And that third one is kind of, I guess, my interpretation of this poll. I don't think that she's going to win Iowa, but could this mean that she potentially is doing a little bit better than the polls overall are saying in some of those Rust Belt states? That could be the case. Now, part of the reason why some people are trying to explain that, as to why the polls may be so off in projecting either a slight Trump lead or a dead tie is, partially because of this. So here you have from Forbes, the description of some of this herding that may be going on. Not hurting, but herding that may be going on with pollsters this year who are basically scared of underestimating Republicans or underestimating Trump. And so in an effort to protect their own reputation, they're trying to just say, look, it's a 50-50, it's a coin toss, either Trump is up by 1 or Kamala's up by 1 or it's a dead heat. So that way, regardless of what the outcome is, if Kamala wins, nobody's surprised, nobody looks bad. If Trump wins, nobody's surprised, nobody looks bad. This is the description that they give of this concept here. They say, herding explains how pollsters aim to protect their reputation by skewing toward a more widely acknowledged election result instead of an outlier that might be terribly wrong. So they're not willing to take risks, basically. They say the effect is more common in the last days of an election. On October 29th, Nate Silver raised concerns on Twitter about herding, saying that there are too many polls in the swing states that show the race exactly as Harris leading by 1 or a tie or Trump leading by 1 point. There should be more variance than that. And in contrast, a few polls represent outliers. Silver often points to the Times Siena College poll as a rare exception to herding pollsters. Now, we'll get to that Times Siena final poll here in a second, but I do think that there is, a fair assessment here that it does seem like in this election, the pollsters are terrified of getting it wrong in one direction or the other. And so again, they're just saying it's a coin flip or it's as close as you could be. And they put, weight on the scales in one way or another in order to get their preferred result. And so they're making it a coin flip when it may not actually end up being a coin flip, right? Now, still, even with this poll that we're looking at coming out of Iowa, I still wouldn't be surprised if it was a Trump landslide. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a Kamala landslide, and I also wouldn't be surprised if it was an incredibly weird, election scenario where you have, certain states splitting up, like maybe the Rust Belt splits up and Kamala wins Wisconsin and Michigan, but then Trump wins Pennsylvania, and then Trump wins Arizona, but Kamala wins Nevada, and then maybe Kamala pulls off North Carolina, but then Trump wins Georgia. Like, we could have an incredibly weird election situation playing out. It's kind of just overall an unprecedented election situation that we haven't seen in a very long time. So now we move on to this because Donald Trump himself reacted to this poll coming out from Seltzer, and he didn't take it too well. So here from Dasha Burns, she says, I spoke with former President Donald Trump by phone this morning. I asked about the new Iowa poll and his message to women thinking about voting for Harris. So on this poll, the Des Moines Register Seltzer poll showing Harris ahead in Iowa, she asks, is that concerning to you? And Trump says, no, it's a fake poll done by a Trump hater. Emerson, I'm up by 10. This is the poll that he's referring to here that came out recently from Emerson College, where he is leading by 10, so he's correct about that. But he says, Emerson, I'm up by 10. I have others that I'm up by 12 and 13 points. That's a fake poll done by a Trump hater who oversampled by a lot Democrats. Now, as she goes on to point out here for context, Trump previously praised this exact same pollster as talented in late 2023 when this pollster had him leading by a wide margin in the Iowa caucuses for the primary. So a classic kind of case study example here of Trump's narcissism, where if you put out a poll, regardless of even if it's the exact same methodology, if you put out a poll that looks favorable to him, he will say, you are a talented pollster, you are impeccable, this is a reputable, methodology that you are putting forward here. He wouldn't use the word methodology, but, you are talented and reputable, and everybody should respect this poll because I am winning in it. But then, literally just a year later, when the poll shows something that's negative for him, he turns around and he says, oh, well, it's rigged. This is only happening because this pollster is a Trump hater. It's the same fucking pollster. It's literally the exact same pollster with probably almost the exact same methodology that had you up previously in the Republican primary. But now that you're down in this poll, they're just Trump haters. It's rigged against you. Okay, a little bit of an insight there into Trump's mind. Now, we also have this here. Again, the final New York Times, Siena polls. And as Nate Silver was pointing out there, these are also a little bit of an outlier. Almost all of the polls, if you go and you look at the RCP averages, have them neck and neck in every single swing state. Either Kamala's +2 or +1, or Trump is +2 or +1, or they're dead tied. This one seems to be a little bit more favorable to Kamala Harris. So in Nevada, the New York Times has Kamala up by 3 percentage points. In North Carolina, they have Kamala up by 2 percentage points. In Wisconsin, she's up by 2. In Georgia, she's up by 1. In Pennsylvania, it's dead tied. In Michigan, it's dead tied. And then in Arizona, Trump is up by 4. So I'll go ahead and leave you off with this. Actually, we're going to watch Kamala's final ad here in a second. But this is my final map, I believe. I asked you guys in the comments of one of my recent videos if you wanted to see my final projection. I was going to do a whole video on it, but I think it's easier just to slot it into something like this. So this is it. This is my final projection. I do think that Kamala Harris is going to win. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with a Trump landslide. I wouldn't be surprised if this map is totally off and Kamala ends up winning, let's say Georgia and Nevada, and it's something looking like this. But this is just my map right here, based on mostly vibes. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and pretend as if I'm pouring through all of the different data markers in every single swing state and which county is potentially leaning this way or that way. This is just based off the polling that I've seen and the vibes of what I think is going to happen. So I could be incredibly wrong, and I guess I'll eat shit if that happens. But I do think that Kamala is going to end up winning the election. I think she's going to end up winning the, blue wall states, if you will, up here. I think she's going to barely hold on in Pennsylvania. I think she'll win in Michigan. I think she'll win in Wisconsin. My sort of upset pick here is I do think she's going to win in North Carolina, even though, again, this is kind of a 50-50 to me. I'm not very confident in this one, but I figured why not? That's what my gut says. She may pull off a North Carolina win. I think Trump is going to carry my home state of Georgia. I think he'll carry Arizona, and I think that he will squeak by and carry Nevada. Now, the final result will be Kamala winning with 286 electoral votes and Trump losing with 252 electoral votes. So screenshot it now. I'm putting it on the record. That's it. That's my lock-in final answer. Let's see how wrong I am in a couple of days. Now, we'll finish off with this because this is Kamala Harris's final ad. In my video later today, we're going to cover the latest bombshell story of the deepening understanding of how close Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were, with some new reporting that's come out and some audio tapes. So I'm going to cover that, and we're also going to fit into that video sort of Trump's closing messages, his final ads, his final pitches, etc., what he's been doing over the last couple of days. And we'll watch his final ad in that other video. So stay tuned for that. Here we're just going to go ahead and check in. I haven't watched this before, but this is Kamala Harris's final pitch to the American people.
Hey, Hannah.
Come here, Hannah. Shake my hand. How you doing?
Good.
And bring everybody back together.
And that's exactly how I feel.
That's what I'm doing, man.
Okay, you have to stay in touch with me, okay? I'm
love
very
to.
serious about that.
Love to.
Okay. Throughout this campaign, I've seen the best of America, and I've seen what is holding you back and weighing you down. High costs, fundamental rights taken away, and politics that have driven fear and division. You deserve better. As president, I'll bring a new generation of leadership. I'll take on price gouging and bring down the cost of groceries and housing and prescriptions. I'll fight for your freedom to make your own choices, And I will protect your health care and your benefits, not take them away. The vast majority of people in our country have so much more in common than what separates them. Good people, hardworking people. We see in our fellow Americans neighbors, not enemies. We believe in each other. We believe in our country. We're not falling for these folks who are trying to divide us. Together, we'll build a brighter future for our nation, where we stand for freedom, we stand for justice, we stand for the dignity of work. We haven't yet quite reached all of those ideals, but we will die trying because we love our country. Now, the baton is in our hands. I pledge to seek common sense solutions to make your life better. And I pledge to be a president for all Americans. Now I'm asking for your vote, because as president, I will get up every day and fight for the American people. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Okay, so I'm going to try to put on my normie analysis hat here and disregard my own personal feelings on this, right? Like the fact that she doesn't discuss the ongoing genocide that the Biden-Harris administration has been supporting for over a year straight now, the fact that she doesn't really get into much substantive policy. A lot of this is kind of just vague posturing on things that she probably in all likelihood won't follow through on if she wins the presidency. So put that aside for a second, right? Is this a good final pitch? It's not bad, okay? I mean, she talks about sort of Trump's divisiveness and how she wants to bring the country together. She wants to lower prescription drug costs, and she wants to take on the price gougers. That's great. I saw a little bit there where UAW President Sean Fain was in the background of one of her speeches. I mean, it's pretty standard, right? It's a pretty standard positive message here. Let's unify, let's work across the aisle, let's get some common sense things done. And, we are not working against our enemies like Donald Trump. This is one of her closing lines that I've heard her deliver at some of her campaign rallies is like, we have a to-do list and Trump has an enemies list. It's not a bad line, given what Trump has been focusing on, talking about sending the military after his political enemies, etc. So it's not a bad final pitch, I guess. I don't know. You guys tell me. How wrong is my map going to be? Am I overestimating Kamala here? Am I underestimating Kamala here? Sometimes I got to remind myself how terrible a campaign that Trump has been running, right? And how sick people are of Trump and everything that he brings to the table. So I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not terribly confident in my final predictions here, but I think I'm going to be close. At this point, over the last couple of months, I've been saying I'd give it a 60%, 55% chance Trump wins. Now I almost reverse that. Now I think it's probably a 60% Kamala Harris wins. So let me know what you guys think. Next couple of days are going to be absolutely chaotic. So we'll have to stay on top of it. But again, stay tuned. I'm going to have another video later today on the Trump-Epstein connection. So that'll be fun.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying